It's the 29th of December, 2010. In a lecture hall at the Berlin Congress Center, three men stand behind a laptop. Projected on the screen above them is a single number. It is the number Sony used to sign every piece of software that runs on the PlayStation 3. This is the story of how Sony lost the key to its own machine. The PlayStation 3 launches in November 2006 at $600. It ships with a feature no other console has. It's called OtherOS, and it lets you install Linux alongside the game system. Sony puts it in the marketing. Universities buy the console in bulk. The United States Air Force wires 1,700 of them together into a supercomputer. There is a reason the machine is hard to open. At its center sits the cell processor, and inside the cell is a unit that can be locked into isolation. Code loaded into it is decrypted there and nowhere else. Not even the operating system running the console can read what is inside. For more than 3 years, the security holds. No custom firmware, no pirated discs on retail hardware. In an industry where every console is broken within months, the PlayStation 3 is the exception. Then, in January 2010, a 20-year-old from New Jersey posts to his blog. George Hotz is already known. 3 years earlier, he unlocked the first iPhone in his parents' house. Now he has spent 5 weeks on the PlayStation 3. He solders a wire to the memory bus and sends a voltage pulse at a precise moment during boot. The pulse corrupts a single comparison. The hypervisor, the layer that keeps the game system sealed off from everything else, hands him read and write access to all of it. He gets in through OtherOS. Linux is the door. He publishes what he found. He does not publish anything that helps you copy a game. His argument is narrow, and he repeats it for the next 18 months. The hardware belongs to the person who paid for it. Sony's answer takes 11 weeks. On the 1st of April 2010, firmware update 3.21 removes OtherOS from every PlayStation 3 in the world. The update is optional in name only. Refuse it, and you lose the store, online play, and every new game. Sony cites security concerns. A feature that was in the advertising is gone. Owners who bought the console to run Linux are given a choice between the feature and the network. Within a month, a class action is filed in California. At the time, this looks like a footnote. It is the hinge the entire story swings on. And a group of hackers decides to put Linux back. They call themselves Fail Zero Overflow. Their stated goal is not piracy. It is to run their own code on hardware they own. So they start looking at how the console decides what is allowed to run at all. Every PlayStation 3 boots by checking signatures. A public key is burned into the machine. Sony holds the matching private key. Sony signs a file, the console checks the signature, and if it matches, the file runs. If it doesn't, nothing happens. Nothing executes on that machine unless Sony signed it. This is called a chain of trust. And the same idea protects your phone, your car, and your bank. The algorithm Sony uses is called ECDSA. It takes 2 inputs, the private key, which never leaves Sony, and a second number, picked fresh at random for every single signature. Cryptographers call it the nonce. It has exactly one job: to make the same key produce a different signature every time. This is not a recommendation. It is in the specification. It is in the textbooks. Because if you ever sign 2 different files with the same nonce, the 2 signatures can be subtracted from one another. And what falls out of that subtraction is the private key. Not a clue about it. The key itself. Sony used the same number every time. Fail Zero Overflow finds it by lining up signatures across firmware versions. The nonce should look different in each one. It doesn't. It is identical. From there, the arithmetic takes a laptop a few seconds. The talk is called Console Hacking 2010. It runs an hour in front of a few hundred people, and it is streamed live. On stage in Berlin, they put the number on the slide. The room laughs. Then they explain what it means, and the laughing stops. This is not a flaw in one firmware version. That key is the root of the entire chain. Sony cannot revoke it because the console checks against a key burned into silicon. Sony cannot replace it because every disk ever pressed for the console was signed with it. Change the key, and the library dies. Fail Overflow shows the number. They do not publish it. Their software runs Linux, and it requires a key the user supplies themselves. They keep the line between homebrew and piracy where everyone can see it. 4 days later, George Hotz publishes the key. It is the 2nd of January, 2011. He posts it on his own website, plainly, with nothing around it. Within hours, it is on forums, printed on t-shirts, tattooed on somebody's arm. It is a number. Numbers are difficult to unpublish. On the 11th of January, Sony sues. The complaint names Hotz and 2 members of Fail Zero Overflow, Hector Martin and Sven Peter. 8 counts, including copyright infringement, computer fraud, and violation of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Then Sony's lawyers do 3 things that change the shape of the case. They subpoena the IP address of everyone who visited Hotz's website. They subpoena his PayPal records. They subpoena YouTube for the account details of everyone who watched his video. The case is no longer about a console. It is about whether a company can demand the identity of an audience. Civil liberties groups file briefs. The story moves from technology sites to the front page. Anonymous notices. In early April 2011, under the name Operation Sony, the collective takes down PlayStation.com and Sony's corporate sites with denial of service attacks. Personal details of Sony employees are posted online. Players who have nothing to do with any of it find the network slow or unreachable. Sony and Hotz had already agreed to settle on the 31st of March. It is made public on the 11th of April. Hotz signs a permanent injunction. He will not touch a Sony product again. He is 21 years old, and he does not have the money to fight. The lawsuit is over. What follows is not. Somewhere between the 17th and the 19th of April, someone gets inside the PlayStation network. This is not a denial of service attack. It is an intrusion. On the 20th, Sony pulls the entire network offline. It stays offline for 23 days. Nothing bought on the store can be downloaded. Nothing online can be played. Every account on it sits behind a maintenance notice with no end date. Names, addresses, dates of birth, email addresses, and passwords for 77 million accounts are taken. Sony informs the public 6 days after discovering the breach. Executives are summoned before the United States Congress. The company later puts the cost at $171 million. A second breach follows at Sony Online Entertainment. Another 24 million accounts. Anonymous denies responsibility and says its people only ever ran denial of service attacks. The FBI investigates. 15 years later, nobody has been charged for the intrusion. Which leaves the question the whole story turns on. Was any of it necessary? The class action over OtherOS was dismissed in 2011. An appeals court revived it in 2014. Sony settled in 2016, and the final agreement was worth $3.75 million. Owners who could prove they had actually installed Linux received $55. Everyone else received $9. Sony spent more removing the feature than the feature had ever costed. Every console Sony has built since generates a fresh nonce for every signature, the way the specification says. The flaw was never exotic. It was one line of an implementation that a first-year cryptography course warns about, shipped in 87 million machines. And the number on the slide in Berlin? Sony patched the firmware. It stacked new checks on top of the old ones. It could not replace the key. Changing it would have broken every disk ever pressed for the console. So the key stayed. It is still there.